Our first presenter today is a skipper of 15 years experience, Dr. Juhan Kreem. Please.
Thank you. As I see, only the hard-boiled historians are left, and I go straight in business. It must have been a sight after heavy autumn storm on 20th of September 1518, when on the bay of Tallinn appeared a large ship, crippled, 3 masts lost. Maria is relatively well known in the history of Danish Navy. The episode of staying in Tallinn is in general known as well. In local Estonian historiography, it has deserved only a short mentioning in Tallinn history writing done by me. One could claim that picking up this kind of single event in a long row of Danish-Estonian encounters in the Middle Ages belongs to the soft journalistic genre of human interest stories, which is partly true. But my claim my ambition in this paper goes a bit further. Through this microhistoric approach to the episode, I will attempt to present various aspects in the life of medieval port town. Respectively, the subtitle of this paper could be Diplomacy and Ship Repairs, Homicide and Banquet. Let us start with general timeline. Maria appears in the sources in 1517 and was built probably a couple of years earlier. She was used for the military transport during the campaign of Christian II to Sweden in 1518 and was on her way back to Copenhagen, when she was hit by the storm. Heavy weather caused also other casualties for the Danish fleet this autumn. We hear from the correspondence about the shipwreck near Klaipeda, today's Lithuania, and some rescue works in Hel, today's Poland. Because of the repair works, Maria had to stay in Tallinn over the winter. Returned to Copenhagen, she was taken to the Netherlands as the King Christian was forced to exile, and there Maria was sold to a Genoese merchant in 1525. When Maria was sold, one of the king's men, Jürgen Hansen, wrote that she was, I quote, a ship with which one could force the whole sea. When it came into the sea, the enemies of your grace were more afraid of Maria than of 10 other ships, end of quote. You know, in one of the Dutch chronicles, its crew is said to have been 500 men. Extraordinary dimensions of the ship are reflected also in the correspondence. The king claims in one of his letters to Gdansk that he needs wood for her main mast of 20 fathoms and a foremast of 18 fathoms, that is 36 and 32.4 meters respectively. On the basis of this data, visual sources and comparison with other large warships of the time, Niels Probst has also made a reconstruction of Maria, what you see here, as a 4-masted caravel, and has estimated her carrying capacity to 800 tons. Maria was rightfully entitled Hauptschippe by the contemporaries. To put that into perspective of 16th century Tallinn, let us bring here the data which Gunnar Miklits has on the salt ships visiting Tallinn in the years 1542, 1550. Out of 664 ships, 65% were less than 200 tons of capacity, and only 10% were over 400, half the size of Maria. The largest ship in these 8 years which Miklits was able to trace was carrying 600 tons. Even when we consider all the uncertainties of historical metrics, there is hardly a doubt that the Tallinners of the time had ever seen a ship like Maria before. With its capacity, Maria fares well also among the larger ships of Western European navies designed as large fighting platforms. one contemporary image which is, well, there is a discussion about that. Is it exactly Maria or like Maria? On the 6th of October 1518, the captain of the ship, Danish knight Ove Vincents and Lunge, described the situation to the Grand Master of the Teutonic Order in Königsberg. The ship had lost all its 3 masts with the rigging, as well as the anchors with the anchor ropes, and much more in the storm. All of the folks of the ships had prayed to St. James, and thanks to this apostle, the wind brought the ship to the port of Tallinn. So the captain, how he counted the masts, I don't know, but he claims that all 3 masts, and the reconstructions claim that there are 4 masts. Okay. It seems that despite of disabled maneuverability, the control over Maria was not completely lost, because she did not strand on a random place on the Baltic shore. Autumn storms in the region tend to bring westerly winds, which together with limited maneuverability of the ship did not left her, of course, much choice. But in general, the ship and the crew were saved, and when she reached Tallinn, she remained afloat. It's not easy to give a short answer to the question, was Tallinn a friendly port? Tallinn account book of the same year, 1518, is expressing the fear of Danish invasion and the works done on town fortifications in this connection. On a grand scale, in the wars over the dissolution of the Union of Kalmar, the Livonians in general and Tallinners in particular had tried to keep neutrality. That was, however, in many respects difficult. Both of the conflict parties sought support from Livonia, as well as tried to block the possibilities of the other party to get supplies, arms and men from Livonia. When Tallinn was a trade metropolis of the whole northern Baltic Sea region, stopping the trade with the Swedes and Finns was not easy at all. Tallinn got frequently into the disputes with the Danish privateers who captured these ships. And the privateers claimed that these are the Swedish goods, whereas Tallinners insisted these are Hanseatic goods, nothing to do with Sweden. The situation was also very volatile. In summer 1518, King Christian II issued safe conducts to Tallinn ships, inviting them to supply his troops and with victuals during the siege of Stockholm, that is, to trade in the Swedish direction. When the truce with Sweden was concluded shortly after, the trade with Sweden was allowed again. But that information took time to reach the privateers on the sea, and their conduct remained difficult to predict. When Maria arrived in Tallinn, there was just one of these cases open again. Near Raisar, certain Danish privateers had seized some ships, some Schuten, from Tallinn bound to Stockholm. A month after the arrival of Maria, the Schuten and most of the prize were returned to the Tallinners. Some of the goods remained in custody, however. Tallinners had to turn to Søren Norbu, a Danish admiral on Gotland, and to the King Christian himself to plead for the return of the rest of the goods. On this occasion, Tallinners also mentioned the help of the captain of Maria in recovering the ships and part of the goods. Obviously, the leaders of Maria, taking into account their situation, did not want to escalate the relations with the town and worked for amicable solution. When the attitude of Tallinners towards Danes was at best ambiguous, the overlord of the town, Teutonic Order, and first of all its Grand Master Albrecht, were doing their best to support the Danes. Already in spring that year, the servant of the King Christian came to Tallinn with the recommendation of the Livonian master of the Teutonic Order, Walter von Plettenberg, to recruit some pilots for the navigation in the Swedish archipelago. When the rumors of the Danish campaign spread, the master was consolating Tallinners that the king is not aiming Livonia, when Livonians are not giving the reason to that by supporting the Swedes. When Maria was cast to Tallinn, the Grand Master in Prussia acted swiftly and sent already on the 14th of October his servant to Tallinn to help to arrange the repairs of the ship. Taking into account the distance between Tallinn and Königsberg, which is about 800 kilometers, the news have spread with remarkable speed. Readiness of the Grand Master to step in is certainly motivated by his wish to gain Danish support in his upcoming war with Poland. But let us return from große Ostseepolitik to local circumstances. It was clear from the beginning on that Maria will have to stay in Tallinn for a longer time. By 6th of October, Ove Vincensens had already made arrangements for the troops to travel to Denmark via land route. As Maria was originally bound to Copenhagen, where the payment of the soldiers was waiting, the captain had not enough cash at his disposal. Moreover, also the repair costs had to be considered. Ove Vincensens could obtain some money from the enviers of the Grand Master Friedrich von Heideck and Dietrich Schönberg, whom he accidentally met in Tallinn, but more support was needed. Town Council of Tallinn, however, started immediately complaining to the King Christian that it had already supported Danish envoys and captains with considerable sums of money, altogether 1,800 marks, and insisted on reimbursement. Nevertheless, Tallinn supported the repairs of the ship, and the Grand Master strongly advised the Livonian Master to lend additional 3,000 marks to Ove Vincensens. There is no way of finding out the whole cost of the repairs. These sums may only serve as an indication that it was very expensive. Maintenance of the ship of such dimensions was probably not an easy task for respective infrastructure in Tallinn. When it became clear to the King Christian that Maria has to stay over winter in Tallinn, he wrote to Gdansk asking for 8 to 10 carpenters to be sent to Tallinn to help his chief builder Johan Shipmover there. King also asked for another 400 to 500 guilders credit to support the master shipmover. Besides that, King Christian sent his courtier, Herman Poll, also a Livonian nobleman, to supervise the works, and King's messenger, Hinrik Trummenskleger, the drummer, was sent via Gdansk and Königsberg to raise funds and support for the works in Tallinn. Gdansk kept some distance. The town council of Gdansk, well, they had also problems with the Danish privateers along the same lines as Tallinners. So Gdansk kept distance. The town claimed that it cannot send carpenters nor lend money. In Gdansk it was believed that it would be easy to recruit the carpenters in Tallinn. It is true that in comparison to Gdansk, Tallinn was not a serious center of shipbuilding. Also, Tallinn Town Council had twice in the 15th century bought a ship or commissioned shipbuilding in Gdansk, ordered a ship from there. But on the other hand, Tallinn carpenters had experience in building smaller vessels, lodien, and had used their experience, for example, in Tartu in the 1480s. So there was know-how here. We may therefore stick to the opinion of the Gdansk Town Council. The works of Maria were indeed arranged locally at the end. To what extent Tallinn carpenters participated is however not known. More serious problem would have been the availability of suitable building material. This is only an illustration from the 18th century, but not any of the wood would do. Already on the 25th of October, Ove Vincentsen was looking for a suitable main mast as far as from Königsberg. Grand Master Albrecht claimed that he cannot deliver such a mast in one piece, but in 3. The scribe of the King of Denmark, Knut, reported in February 1519 that the foremast and the small masts are ready in Tallinn and the ship will be able to sail by St. George Day. But at the same time, the captain was still looking for some masts. He and the envoy of the Grand Master, Dietrich Schönberg, were in March 1519 also planning to build a yacht in Tallinn for the Grand Master, but dropped the idea because of the lack of local wainscot, that is oak planks or boards. Maria's rigging probably remained unfinished or substandard when she left Tallinn, because King Christian was in June 1519 still inquiring if there would be wood for the masts for Maria in Gdansk. Gdansk replied that they do not have so long masts as the king asked, but were ready to supply shorter ones. It is of course clear that not any wood would have done. Tallinn's immediate surroundings are not particularly rich in forests. Also, the town was bringing its timber as far as from Kolga, 50 kilometers east from Tallinn. A commander of the Teutonic Order in Tallinn castle was buying his building timber on the ships in the harbor in the 16th century as well, which again means wood import. Out of Livonian towns, particularly Riga was a hub of forestry products, which arrived the city on the river Daugava from further upstreams. Timber supply of Gdansk was dependent on Wisla. In Prussia, also great rivers, Nemunas and Prevola, contributed to the availability of timber on the coast. In the northern Estonia, such an industry was absent at that time and developed only later in the 17th century, Narva, with the river again. In conclusion, when Tallinn was able to make the repairs and build smaller vessels, it was not actually suitable for large-scale wooden shipbuilding, and Maria was clearly oversized for the local capacities. Nevertheless, with some effort, Maria was made operational again. Efforts to gain better fittings for Maria were actually continuous. King Christian wrote to Gdansk already on 8th of October 1518 from Bornholm, most likely not knowing the fate of his flagship yet, that he has heard about the large anchor, 12 ship bows, about 2 tons, heavy in Gdansk, which he would like to obtain for Maria. Gdansk replied that they try to look for it, but they are ready also to arrange the making of the new anchor, for payment, of course. As Maria has lost her anchors, so it was really necessary to commission one. And in March 1519, it was shipped from Gdansk to Tallinn. And it is fair to assume that Maria did not leave Tallinn before it arrived. A royal payment, on the other hand, was still pending 2 years later. In summer 1521, when Gdansk delegation to Copenhagen was among other things demanding its price, 210 Prussian marks. Well, anchors were also expensive. A couple of decades earlier, Tallinn Town Council had sold one anchor for 41.5 Riga marks, and this is the account book drawing which registers the income for the town. And also in this comparison of 2 different currencies, but again 210 and 41, also in this comparison the dimensions of Maria are manifested. But what about the crew in the meantime? How many men Maria was bringing to Tallinn is not known. When its crew was hundreds of men, so must have been the mercenary corps she was carrying. As we had from Ove Vincentsen's first report, a number of men left on foot and on horseback. The mercenaries were most likely dismissed after the Swedish campaign was over and the truce was concluded between Denmark and Sweden. And we have also other information. One ship which landed in Kuronia, Kurland, which brought unemployed mercenaries from Sweden about the same time. There was the discussion, should the Grand Master hire them for the upcoming war with Poland. So the mercenaries left, but even when a considerable number of men did not stay in Tallinn over the winter, the crew and the officers of the ship certainly remained. Wintering sailors in Tallinn was not unusual. although the estimation of their number remains very vague. In 1556, Tallinn claimed that they already have 400 or more wintering sailors, and this figure the town uses as an argument against housing yet another banner of mercenaries in town. The council claimed that they cannot prevent the fights between the sailors and the mercenaries, nor to protect the honor of their wives, daughters, and maids. For a town with 5,000 to 6,000 inhabitants, the presence of hundreds of able-bodied men was obviously a problem. We do not have to confine ourselves only with imagination this time. On 12th of February 1519, the town councillor Gert Witte asked safe conduct for two men, Andreas Himmersberg and Hans Krone, because of the fight they had with the headmen and privateers of Denmark, whereby one named Niklas was killed. Himmersberg and Krone were lodging by Tallinn burghers, which probably means that they were either traveling merchant journeymen or wintering sailors. Was Niklas a crew of Maria or some other Danish privateer ship? We cannot tell with certainty. But the incident exemplifies the problem of the discipline. However, as there is no other evidence on escalation and no further correspondence on this particular issue between the mighties of this world, we may assume that the case was settled somehow. Furthermore, other evidence suggests that the wintering sailors were in Tallinn not only a problem, but also welcoming guests at the parties. Monument has collected mentionings of sailors in medieval account books where they performed sword dance in a town hall or St. Canute Guild during the Shrovetide festivities. Moreover, the ship's masters are often listed as guests of the respective banquets of elite corporations, first of all in the Brotherhood of Black Heads. In connection to the stay of Maria in Tallinn, Ove Vincentsen was invited to the Great Guild, where he took part on the festivities of Shrove Tuesday. That year it was on 8th of March, 1519, and he became a member of the guild. It is not clear when Maria set sail. In the end of March, she was still in Tallinn. And on 19th of June, King Christian was already ordering her repair materials to Copenhagen. That is, she was then already there or expected to arrive soon. Navigational season usually started in Tallinn in April. These are also the calculations of Gunnar Mikvits. But the account book of the town registers the amount of gunpowder lent to the captain of Maria on 28th of May. That does not necessarily mean that the ship was still in Tallinn at that time, but only suggests that it might have left some time in May. So, in conclusion, how could we characterize the stay of Maria in Tallinn? It cannot be denied that a certain suspicion towards the large body of Danish navy was felt in the town. Tallinn had problems with Danish privateers. The Grand Master of the Teutonic Order, however, insisted on helping the Danes and was later, in summer 1519, not satisfied with the treatment of the Danes in Tallinn. The town could not completely avoid the rows between the wintering sailors, and surviving evidence indicates that the repairs of the ship were not completely satisfactory. On the other hand, the ship was made operational again, and the captain joined the party of the merchant elite. The problems could obviously be solved. Maria was an extraordinary ship, the largest man of war on the Baltic at that time. And also its visit to Tallinn demanded extraordinary efforts. But in general, it could be managed. Thank you.
Are there questions? Comments? Where did the ship stay in Tallinn? Exactly. So it was capable to go to the harbor or
This
still floating?
the easiest answer would be we don't know. But on the other hand, the topography of the medieval harbor is well, we have these 17th century, beginning of 17th century, late 16th century drawings, from where we know the location at that time. But when we read the account book of the town, it was, well, the building of harbor was continuous, and frequently autumn storms destroyed it. So they had to rebuild the bulwark really often. So the suggestion would be, until the archaeologists don't find some hard evidence, that the place was shifting in the Middle Ages for some time. But well, when we look at the gate indicates the direction where the harbor was. More exactly, we could not tell. And the ships probably stayed on the bay, or were taking shelter behind Paljassaare or somewhere there. So they don't have the Tallinn Bay is not that protected as well Stockholm or Helsinki, but you could stay here in the ice, afloat on the
even without anchor.
They must have solved the question somehow.
What was the last thing you said?
The anchor, without anchor.
Yeah.
Madis.
Yeah. You mentioned Hermann Paul, so Livonian nobleman who was working for Christian II. Is it known what he actually did in Tallinn?
No. The Paul family is they are the vassals of the Teutonic Order in southern Estonia. Mm-hmm. So he was, but he's entitled by Christian as his courtier. Mm-hmm. What means that probably we have to do here with the youngster serving in the court for some time to learn the manners. So he's later. Well, the only other piece I found for the footnotes is that he's holding the manor of Kolga, which. But the evidence comes from the later disputes when Christian is already in exile, and Frederick is claiming that a certain Hermann Poll is illegally there. That's what we know.
Good.
Yeah. Two things. If it was this enormous large ship, largest in the Baltic, with hundreds of soldiers who had left, why didn't somebody come and burn it off? I mean, there must have been some kind of protection also against people coming sailing from outside.
That place needs some rephrasing, I think, because some men left the mercenaries hired for the Stockholm campaign, but operating the ship of that size, you have the crew and the sailors of the period are good enough to protect their ship when they sail.
The other question, we talk about the mast and the size, but I suppose it must be something that had been filled years earlier. I mean, you can't just cut down a tree and put it on. So that may that also be part of the problem, It's not a question of finding a tree, it's a question of finding a tree you have cut down
I
10
actually
years earlier.
I actually came to these figures and wondered myself. I even well, it's the fathoms, the Danish fathoms, and when you do it in the metric system, well, these are pretty long timbers. I was even trying to Google how they possibly could be that long. Well, it almost. So there are some. I'm not that sure if it has to be dried.
No, but then if the timber isn't dried, it's rotting very fast, and then it maybe survives one journey, and then you have to replace it again. And if you spend that much money.
But then this is the question when you ask in Gdansk, then they have their shipbuilding running, so they have supplies of some kind already at the disposal, and we actually very little is known how the shipbuilding in Tallinn was organized at that time, and it wasn't certainly very spectacular. Werft. Shipyard. Right, Johan.
Torben.
Perhaps you did say that, and if you did, please apologize. But what happened with Maria after her visit to Tallinn? Did she? Was she long in service?
She left with Christian to the Netherlands.
Okay.
In the exile. So that's where it was sold a couple of years later to support Christian's other activities. And there the interest of the Danish naval historians ends, and well, what the Genoese merchant did with the ship, I really don't know.
I think there's a story about when Christian II came to the Netherlands, and then he lent the ship to Charles V, and Charles V sailed with it to Spain, and they were very impressed, but because they had never seen so large a ship.
Okay.
But then it returned to the Netherlands and then was sold.
This is where the very good.
So eventually she ended up being quite operational.
Yeah. Well, they did it quite. I think it's just that the Tallinn the most urgent repairs were made, and it was then outfitted better.
I have some memory of a source. I think it must be about Maria describing Christian sailing towards Stockholm, and then there was the big ship like a hen. It was so enormous, and then around all the other ships, the small chicken. It's a wonderful illustration.
Hen and the chicken. Good. But when it's really when these dimensions are adequate, Tallinners had never seen a ship like that before, and later.
So, Mikael.
I have a question on the international political scene, because we know that Christian had close contacts, was basically allied with the Grand Master, and the Grand Master was really, started a war against Poland, and the Livonian part of the Teutonic Order did not participate in it. So the question is, how the Livonian part of the order reacted to all of this? So they were like in the middle. Did they want to stay out of this?
In the war with Poland, it's quite clear they have to support the Grand Master, so there is no question about that. And they are doing that. They are paying cash, considerable sums, and sending also the troops. So they participate in the Reiterkrieg. how effectively or how wholeheartedly is another question. They do that. What concerns the Danish side of the problem, then the especially in Tallinn correspondence, Danes are a problem. And the relation with Sweden, well, in this triangle, it's really difficult to move. And the master is well, he's giving safe conduct to the servants of Søren Norby, and the towns are very angry about that. So the Livonian branch of the order is kind of more pro-Danish as the towns. But then, well, at the end they are not well supporting Søren Norby that much. They are trading with the booty of the Gotland admiral, and that causes problems.
So, thank you once again.
Thank you.